believe
it's 5, but Amazon takes another 5.
But yes, that's another thing
It's
to
like
keep in mind is
10%.
that, so the crowdfunder will take a percentage, and then they'll either use Amazon or PayPal and also take a percentage off of that. So there's multiple fees tacked on there, so you want to look at what you're going to be paying out of the funds that you raise. I actually don't know your fees off the top of my head, so.
So just as a summary, Kickstarter is somewhere between 8 and 10%, depending on the Amazon fees. Kickstarter takes 5%, and then Amazon, depending on the number of transactions and the size of the transactions, the fees range between, say, 3 and 5% total. So it's between 8 and 10% generally for Kickstarter. Indiegogo is between 9 and 15%, I believe.
Unless you go through Fractured Atlas.
Unless you go through Fractured Atlas. Fractured Atlas is 6% regardless, all the time. And Rocket Hub is an 8% flat fee. So we incorporate, through our payment service provider, we average the fees over the entire site. Rather than taking pledges like Kickstarter, we actually charge people's credit cards immediately. The money is held during the term of your project, and then we refund it to the individual contributors if you don't hit your goal. We're all or nothing as well. And we'll come back to all or nothing and the different ways to leverage it. But so it's an 8% flat fee, but we refund the contributions that went to unsuccessful projects as a virtual currency. So the money initially stays in the system, and we offer you the opportunity to repost a different project or a modified project. And rather than having to hit up people for the money that they gave and ask them to give it again, essentially they can just click and give the money that they already spent, right? That they already gave.
Jen, would you explain why that would be good?
What we found, what we initially hypothesized, and then it proved true, getting somebody to give once is the initial sort of hurdle. Asking them to go back and surmount that initial hurdle again, it just makes it a little more challenging. So we wanted to incorporate the all or nothing aspect, which again we'll talk about why later, but we wanted to make it easier for people to give that second time, whether it's to your next project, your modified project, or to somebody else's project. Someone else who's on the site who has something else that is of interest, etc. It becomes just a sort of single click at that point, because their money, their balance of $10, $50, whatever it is still is floating around in the system. Assuming they're not interested in giving and just want their money back, it's very easy. We just credit their credit cards upon request.
So Dan, just to go back though, can you give us an overview of the kinds of ways that people are using Indiegogo within your system within your fiscal sponsored projects?
Well, they're using it for all different types of projects. So we are a multidisciplinary organization, so we have projects that are using it to fund specific films that they're producing. We have projects that are using it to write books. We have projects that are using it for a theater production, for an album that they're creating, a kind of a huge broad spectrum of different kinds of projects. We've had one film project that has raised either close to or over $100,000 through Indiegogo since their campaign launched in July. So I think their campaign, I haven't checked on them recently, but their campaign is close to complete. And you know, our projects have been pretty successful so far in reaching their goals, and in, I think, just as first-time users coming into this, really, you know, embracing it and kind of looking at all the different ways that they can, you know, energize people to maybe donate twice, because I think that that's a huge thing that happens, I know, across the fundraising campaigns that are all or nothing. Often, if you're close to reaching your goal and your donors are, you know, they're synced in through your Facebook page or through your Twitter page, they see that you're maybe like $100 or $1,000 away from reaching your goal, and they'll often contribute a second time. So that's a really powerful tool to get people to continue to fund you and to fund you more than once.
And just to clarify, the 6% flat fee includes the Indiegogo fee, or it's in addition to the
No,
Indiegogo
it
fee?
includes the Indiegogo fee. So for all the projects that are on Indiegogo's website that are fiscally sponsored by Fractured Atlas are actually, Fractured Atlas is actually charging the credit cards with our own merchant account. So there's no Amazon, there's no PayPal, and then we release the funds to you just like we do to any of our fiscally sponsored projects and charge the 6% fee at that time.
So I was just going to say two other small things. One, I've had three different people who've come over the last month or two, and they said, "Oh yeah, we're getting ready to start projects on Kickstarter and Indiegogo." Keep going. No, don't. Pick one and focus all of your energy in, because you're trying to get people. It's a good idea to find out, if you can, where do the people you know already use. So if your community is already on Kickstarter, or already on Rocket Hub, or already on Indiegogo, or any of the other networks, build off of that, because it is that getting people on. Yeah, I got on Kickstarter when it was first launched, and kind of like it. I've gotten used to it, and it's in the mix of things that I check each week, because I'm always curious of who's coming up with good projects. I haven't contributed through the other platforms. So if you find that your network is in one platform or the other, it's just like annual fundraising, that you go back to your donor list and ask them to give to another year. It's the same thing. You can get one project and then another and then another. So doing that, and also raising your money, I think like the special event, your other money through Kickstarter. So if people are willing to come to an event and give money, or you're sending out something else to give, you're asking them when they come to a performance to make an additional donation, route all of those donations if you can through Kickstarter, because it helps you build that Kickstarter community, or that any of the platform communities, and you tend to get traction. People look and say, "Oh, 100 people supported that project. That must be a project worthy of support."
No, but okay, so here's what, I don't mean to put a spanner, but I'm in film. I get 4 Kickstarters a day. I mean, I'm so no. So I feel like we have to have a conversation about fatigue, just really? And what cuts through that? What are people seeing as successful? Because, and one of the things I've been saying to filmmakers now is okay, when you're running your numbers, right, you have to make sure that you have a lot of people that maybe never done this before in your Rolodex. Because if you're just going to your filmmaker friends, filmmakers are just tired of Kickstarter. So they're not actually going to necessarily show up. So you've got to go to your aunt and your aunt's network. And so are there any other, not some of the tips I've been giving, but is anyone else giving fatigue tips?
I was just going to say the power of the tax deduction seems to really help kind of raise the monetary value that people are contributing. Mm-hmm. And it's often can bring in new people, because maybe somebody who would give the $500 donation or the $1,000 donation, they're probably in a tax bracket that they would want that tax write-off. So that's my advice, but I'm coming from a very specific place. So.
But just to be clear, though, that's something that Fractured Atlas would offer that Indiegogo, because of their relationship with Indiegogo.
Indiegogo, and we are actually working on a partnership with Rocket Hub right now too. So that hopefully will be rolling out in a couple of months. So.
Exactly right. Yeah, I'd say the tax deduction is certainly a possible boost, though I would definitely say it's going to be more attractive to larger donors than smaller ones, or at least maybe should be. I'm not sure that folks will necessarily think about the power of a $20 tax write-off as opposed to a $1,000 tax write-off. But no, my biggest suggestion in terms of fighting donor fatigue is with the rewards. Asking people just to give money again and again, people get tired of it, just like you've experienced. But one of the things that these crowdfunding platforms suggest is to offer a reward in exchange for somebody's contribution. So it's not just a charitable contribution, it's not just giving their money away, they're actually participating in an exchange. We've sort of branded it as trade versus aid. And in the end, if you can create a $5 or a $10 or a $100 reward that is of interest, that people want to purchase, you can imagine people make $5 purchases all the time. Walking down the street, you see somebody who has a nifty marionette for $5. Yeah, I'll buy it. I won't think twice about it. Whereas online, just being asked for another $5 handout, cyber begging, as it were, is, tiresome. I get enough of that with the guys on the subway. But yeah, if you can create rewards that are a very good value or fun or interesting, a lot of things that, a lot of rewards that our creatives have made that are very popular actually offer access to the individual creative. People want to hang out with you, that's totally a viable reward,
I was gonna say, yeah, like, you know, they want to hang out with them.
Right, so it's important for you to value your own time. If you suddenly have 100 different people that you've agreed to cook dinner for, maybe that's a problem, but
really big bowl house.
yeah.
One dinner.
But invitations to a premiere party or invitations to a closed gallery event for your critics or fuelers, as we've branded them on Rocket Hub. But there's something to be said for that exclusive invite that is very valuable to folks and that may be enough to keep them coming back, or at least keep them from getting tired of you.
So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to have each of the panelists give examples of awesome, successful things that have brought people novel ways to bring people into the fold, the giving fold. For examples, or maybe, and if you can't think of a fun one to do, you can think of a fun one you shouldn't do. And then we're going to open it up for questions, if that's okay with everyone here. Who wants to start? Actually, I will start with just this one thing. I think it's really, really crucial in the same way that you need to be very clear about how much money you think you can raise. Like, really be very clear about how much money it costs to give something of your time. I think that artists and organizations have a tendency to underestimate their staff time and their people time. And there's a real cost that's associated with that. And I think being mindful of that, if you're making sure that you're incentivizing correctly, so that you're not just selling your time for cheap and really creating an onerous situation for yourself. And sort of in the same way that you map out, these are the people likely to give me $500, these are the people likely to give me $250, making sure that you also have an overlay of like, what's your plan if, your college stalker shows up? I'm serious, like that, I've had somebody that happened to that wanted to buy dinner and it was like, so just be mindful about what you're doing. You're opening yourself up publicly and be clear. But who's gonna start? You start, Chris. You're quiet.
So what are the fun ways to raise money?
Yeah, what you give? What did you give to these
Okay,
people? What was
okay.
your trade?
Well, one thing, I mentioned the auction before, but it was, I missaid that. It was actually a raffle that we had at the EFA Gallery where people gave between $1,000 and $1,000 and you got a ticket and there's art on the wall, and some people gave lithographs, some people gave monoprints, some people gave screen prints. So basically we had wine, music, and this raffle, and you didn't know what you were going to get. And it all went to Carrier Pigeon, our magazine. So that was a lot of fun, and I think it got people really excited. One thing we're planning on doing for the next fundraising splash is to maybe host an event where we have music and more art, get some DJs in, I don't know, charge covers, have some incentive to get a lot of people together to network and raise money for Carrier Pigeon. And
Wait a minute. So what were you doing for Kickstarter? What were you incentivizing for Kickstarter? Where's my T-shirt?
for Kickstarter, did you get t-shirt?
No,
I'm in trouble. I gotta.
There we go. Fulfillment.
We're on that. Basically, with Kickstarter, we also did incentives where, depending on how much you gave, you received something. So if you gave $5, you maybe got a poster, or if you gave $50, you got to pick between 3 fine artists,